Welcome to Maritime Matters, a podcast focused on leaders in the maritime market, the people, the companies, the technologies that are making and breaking the news, helping to lead the maritime industry to a safer, more efficient, more profitable, and cleaner future. Welcome aboard. This is Greg Troutwine with the Maritime Matters, the MarineLink Podcast, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Fred Paup, the chairman of the board and the executive vice president, Manson Construction, to discuss the history and trajectory of this U.S. marine construction and dredging brand with specific insights on the massive new hopper dredge currently under construction. So, Fred, again, a pleasure to have you on. And to kick us off, why don't you discuss yourself a little bit? And by that, I mean how you got in the business, your tenure in the marine industry, and how and when you knew that yours would be a career in maritime.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. So Manson started in 1905 by my great-grandfather, Peter Manson. And as the lore goes, my grandmother held the lantern as he dug up a jar of gold coins, which was in the ground because they didn't trust banks. And with that, they took those gold coins and they purchased a winch. And that winch then was put on a barge, and that became Manson's first pile driver. Slightly after 1905, which would be 1992, I came to Manson. And at the time, Manson was a $50 million revenue company. And I started on the bottom rung, and I did everything from bank reconciliations to administrative functions, and worked my way up over the years. I got involved in dredging in the mid-90s and have just gone from there ever since. Before I was at Manson, I actually was an English major with a writing emphasis. I had a couple of poems published, not your typical marine background. But when I came into Manson, I learned pretty quickly that being in a family business at the time was not all great, and I didn't want to be perceived as dead weight. So I ended up going back to school, earning my MBA while working. And then once I went to the dark side, to the left side of the brain, that was it, and the rest is history. So today, Manson now is a $500 million revenue company. And in 2012, we became a 100% S Corporation ESOP. So we are employee owned. So our salaried employees own Manson, and I'm proud to say that our values increased almost 6 times since 2012. So it's been a fabulous part of our retirement program for our employees.
Well, that's fantastic. And again, I've been doing this. I think our careers kind of like mirror each other, and that I started in '92 myself, and I've been doing this for 32 years. And I can tell you from all the interviews that I've done with all the executives around the world, there is no typical maritime experience. So I appreciate you sharing, obviously the unique background of your own company, but also your unique journey as well. You've already given us the big numbers, the revenue numbers, which are, by any stretch, by on any day in any way, that's how you're going to measure a company. But I know a lot of people watching this and listening will know the Manson Construction name well. But beyond the revenue numbers that you've already mentioned, can you give a by the numbers looking at the company using the metrics of your choice? And really, I'm just looking something that gives a size and shape to the company, its maritime and dredging operations, fleet, and capabilities.
Absolutely. Well, first off, Manson performs 99% of our work over our time has been U.S. based. We are a Jones Act company. All of our equipment is U.S. built, U.S. flagged, U.S. crewed, built in U.S. shipyards. And so that mainly is why we stick to the U.S. market. We are roughly 50% heavy civil marine construction. That's bridges, wharves, piers for the Navy, offshore work in the oil patch, removing platforms and jackets. And then 50% of our business is dredging, and that's the 3 food groups of dredging. That's cutter suction dredging, clamshell dredging, and hopper dredging. And so we are located geographically around the United States. Our headquarters is in Seattle, and then Richmond, California, Long Beach, California, Houma, Louisiana, and Jacksonville, Florida. So we perform most of our work on the the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Gulf coasts. We have worked internationally, of course. We've worked in Mexico, we've worked in the Caribbean, we've worked in Canada. Canada has its own marine cabotage laws. So when we've worked in Canada, it's either have to have been a unique circumstance to get permission to work there, which would be akin to a Jones Act waiver in the United States. We actually did a project years ago for a subcontractor of a subcontractor of a subcontractor to Exxon in Sakhalin Island in Russia. So that was quite an experience for our crews to work there. And have equipment, we'll work for food, we will go wherever it is we need to go, we can tow it. But where we are most competitive is in our home markets of the United States. And so that's really what we focus on.
I genuinely appreciate that. And again, in my career, I've traveled the world for 32 years and I've heard some incredible stories. So, the have equipment will work for food is that's a can-do attitude and a can-do mandate. And again, the fact that you are Jones Act and have enjoyed such incredible growth is a great story in and of itself. So, I know there are many, but when you look back at your past year of operations, by projects that you've completed or projects that you've started, what do you consider to be the highlights?
Well, I think that the highlight project, I would say, because it was a culmination of working with the Army Corps of Engineers, working through some issues on a project, and the sensitivity of it for the locals was a beach project that we did in San Clemente, California. It was part of the West Coast Dredging 2023 project. And at the end of that season, in between that and the 2024 year, we had a project in San Clemente. We proceeded to set up pipe there, mobilize there. We went to the Barrow area to get the sand where you collect the sand with the dredge. And it was rocks, not like little pebbles, like 5, 6, 7-inch rocks. Well, the Army Corps obviously wasn't expecting to have rocks in the Barrow area, which they selected. The locals sure as heck didn't want rocks. They wrote a letter on day one saying, please don't put any more rocks on our beach. And of course, our contract was with the Army Corps of Engineers. And so we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. We went to another beach after that, in the meantime, while they worked it out, they found a different Barrow area. And so then we were able to later on go back to San Clemente, pump actual sand on the beach, which they wanted and they desperately needed. And so we made that work. And it got to a level where, I won't name names, but the highest level of the Army Corps of Engineers, you had some congressmen from California who were very involved. There were some erroneous things going around. And of course, our client is the Army Corps of Engineers in that instance. And so we just clam up. We don't say whose fault it is or anything like that. We're just like, please talk to the Army Corps of Engineers. But we are a can-do company. One of our core values is find a better way. And so we did the best that we could to give them the best project. And in the end, we made good. But
obviously we've talked about the run you've had with your company and the tremendous growth that you've had. And if you look at the dredging industry a little closer in, it's probably right towards the end of COVID, around 2023, when everything really started kicking into gear again. And the industry has really enjoyed a strong 2 years. When you look at the market in general, and I know that your operations and your capabilities are diverse, but what do you see as the drivers for the dredging projects from your perspective? And how's it look for you in the coming 5 years?
absolutely. Well, right now we are in the salad days, as they'd say, of funding for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers work. With the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, percentage of those funds having increased over the years, the Army Corps has been able to get more projects done on their list. They end up putting in a priority list to GAO based on a cost benefit analysis. And so they're able to get farther down on the list to perform that work now that there's been more money. And so when earmarks went away, it was harder for the smaller harbors to get funded. But now that earmarks are to a certain degree back, with limitations, of course, more of those small draft harbors are able to be dredged. And because the money is there, they're able to do it. The Army Corps, is our best client. We like working for the Army Corps of Engineers. I refer to it as the loving arms of the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regs, because you know the rule book. You know how you can be a good actor. You know how you can perform the contracts. You know where the risks are contractually. Sometimes you get contracts from non-core entities and they don't understand what is kind of industry standard and what isn't. And so they end up inadvertently shooting themselves in the foot by having bad contract language in there. And then they don't get good bids because their projects are just dramatically riskier than they would be if they were put out by the Army Corps of Engineers. So I think the way the market is right now, there's been a huge buildup of equipment in the U.S. dredging market, and Manson has been part of that. And so, we're building a 15,000 cubic yard hopper dredge. Once the hopper is operating, we will pull the trigger on, we are building a new 30-inch ABS offshore cutter suction dredge. And so, these are major investments that take literally years to build and years to plan. And so that is the commitment that private industry has had with this market. So, one of the interesting things about the U.S. dredging industry that is different than a lot of places is that the U.S. federal government has its own dredges that it operates. And so there are limitations on what projects industry does. For example, around the country, there are what are called small business set-aside projects. And so larger businesses can't do those. That's great for smaller businesses, but the problem is if those small businesses get too busy, then they sometimes have a hard time responding, and that creates issues. At the same time, you have the Army Corps of Engineers operates its own hopper dredges. So Portland District has 2 hopper dredges, the Essions and the Yaquina. The New Orleans District has the Wheeler, and the Philadelphia District has the McFarland. Well, if they don't like our pricing, or if there's an emergency and industry can't respond, then government dredges work there. So it's really a unique market. Name how many industries can you name where if industry isn't doing the work, then the government steps in and does that work? I can't think of any, really. So it's an interesting dynamic.
It is an interesting dynamic. It truly is. So, you just referenced it briefly in your last answer, but I want to take a deeper dive into the new Frederick Paup, the 15,000 cubic yard hopper dredge, which is under construction now and probably just getting or almost ready for delivery. I was talking to Bill Doyle at DCA, who you know well, and he was gushing about this vessel. Not too much because I know he has other constituents to talk to as well. But why don't this audience is keenly interested in new ships and boats. Why don't you give us more detailed insight on the new vessel, its technical capabilities, and really dive into the attributes that you see will set it apart from others in the fleet.
Great. Yeah. So the Frederick Paup is essentially years of experience and knowledge that Manson has built up with our hopper dredge, Glen Edwards. So in 2006, we put the Glen Edwards into service. She's a 13,000 cubic yard dredge. Well, the Frederick Paup is kind of like the bionic man of dredges. So when you compare the Frederick Paup to the Glen Edwards, we could improve everything. We attempted to improve everything that we could. So for example, she's bigger, 15,000 yards versus 13,000 cubic yards. She's faster. Her hull form has been modified somewhat. She's 420 feet long, 81 feet wide. And so, and then additionally, we've done a number of safety improvements to her to make it to where our crew can go bow to stern and still be below deck. As we learned on one of the Superstorm Sandy projects that we did, where we put over 2 million cubic yards of sand on the beach from Lock Harbor to Deal, we when you're out off the coast of New Jersey in February in the weather, not good, not good. So we're trying to cut down on that for our crews when they're out there. We also did a lot of things with just plain when performing maintenance on the vessel, your access and egress to certain areas, as well as just your space. And so one of the benefits of engines being more modern, you know, they will be more fuel efficient. Their footprint isn't quite as big. And also one thing we did do with the Frederick Paup is she is diesel electric. So the way we have power on the vessel is slightly different than just the all diesel Glen Edwards as a comparison. Also, we have in-hole pumps for pump out. We will be a lot more competitive on beach work than we've been previously. Not that we're uncompetitive, but just mainly our prior equipment, the Newport, the Bayport, the Westport, the Glen Edwards, all hopper dredges, have focused more on the maintenance dredging market. And while they have pump out beach capability, and we pump beaches all over the country, we will be dramatically more efficient. And so the market out there is going to see, our competitors are not going to like us, but they're going to see some more competition, more bids. We'll be able to just bid a lot more projects. For a sense of Manson, this would be like adding 3 Bayports to the Manson fleet. So our just overall capability is going to be huge. So we will be the Cookie Monster of dredges, eating up the work like crazy. And so it's really going to be a big change there. We've been building her in Texas at Seatrium Amfels. And so just, you know, through COVID, so it's been, the dredge is a little tardy, but we are in commissioning stages right now, which is great. So there's no more building going on. It's about computers and systems talking to each other, that kind of thing. So coming to a harbor near you soon.
That's spectacular. And I'm on the South Shore of Long Island. So if I walk out my front door in 5 minutes, I can be on my boat. In 15 to 20 minutes, I can be on the ocean. So, and right now, the Great South Bay is a skating rink. So I can surely attest to the January, February off the coast in the Atlantic conditions. So I'm sure your crews will be very pleased. So if I just as a side, you talked a little bit about the diesel electric. What kind of what engines or what make did you fall on for the new unit?
So those are Wabtec engines,
Okay.
and so formerly GE, and at
Yep.
the time they are Tier 4, and so you know when you build a new vessel nowadays, you have to we could have got ones that had urea, and we
Yep.
didn't want to do that. We've done that before on one
Yep.
of our cutter suction dredges for California before we repowered it for the 3rd time to meet air quality requirements. And we knew that we didn't want that. And so, you know, the complexity and the cost for doing diesel electric versus just straight diesel is a lot of money. But over time, we're going to pay for it in fuel. We're going to pay for it in being more environmentally friendly. And we're also going to be more efficient for some aspects of the vessel itself. So
You talked about the vessel. So where do you already have the jobs lined up for it when it comes out, or what will its operational profile look like right now in 2025?
well, 2025, I would expect us to spend some time working for the Mobile District on their Mobile Harbor project, as well as for the New Orleans District on the Mississippi River. And so because we can't tell you exactly when it'll be out, I can't tell you what that order will be, but most likely that is where the dredge will work. And we have such a great relationship with all those districts. More work is coming out. We could, in theory, send her to Atlantic Ocean Channel to work on the phase 2 project there, where our dredge Bayport is currently working. But we're going to play musical dredges, which we often do. You know, that's one thing about our industry is we like the opportunity to be entrepreneurial. You know, we prefer invitation for bids, or as we call them, rip and reads. We want to be able to create the best mousetrap that we can and go perform that work. And so we'll move the dredges around to optimize the correct dredge on the correct project. For example, our dredge Newport, which is the smallest of our dredges in the Gulf and East Coast for hopper dredges, she's a great pumping dredge. And so we have her out working right now for Kings Bay for the Jacksonville district. And she's just such a great pumping dredge. And due to the way the cycle time is on the project, those particular reaches she's working, she's the perfect dredge for that. So we don't necessarily need a bigger dredge there. We could have one, but we choose to deploy her elsewhere. So that's why the Glen Edwards dredge is working for Navarre right now, which is on the Panhandle in Florida, and there's snow there. We had it where our crew there, the incoming night crew couldn't make it in. So we just had to stop. That's the first in my career that we've had snow in the Panhandle of Florida. So that had to shut down our beach project.
That's awesome.
What a country, what a world.
I got to tell you, that makes me laugh because we're based in New York City, but we've had an office in Florida forever, 25 years. And, mainly it's our sales team. We have a lot of our sales team down there. And there's nothing that makes me laugh more. I'll jump on a call. We always have a Monday morning call, and I jump on. And if they're not in T-shirts, I know something's gone terribly wrong. So, using your career from its start to today as bookends. When you look back, what can you discuss? What do you consider to be the number one maritime technology or technique that, in your opinion, has most substantially improved the ability to operate more safely, more efficiently?
Well, this is kind of a cheat of an answer, but I would say it's actually safety. I will speak as an industry and as Manson. It is the mindset about safety that goes on now. Manson is IIF, incident and injury free. It's more of a journey than, say, a program or a checklist. It's none of that. It's about employees having personal responsibility for what they do, but also it's for employers to do the best that we can to say, engineering controls, engineer out hazards. When you build a new vessel, take into account that you need to do things from a safety standpoint to make the vessel safer for your employees to then go out and do a good job performing their work. And so our number one core value, taking care of people, that's what we do. Whether it's our people, whether it's our subcontractors, that's what we want to do. So that was really a shift. And we had a lot of kind of old schoolers who were not wild about the changes that we were doing. A lot of people are used to what they used to call safety cops, right? Oh, you're doing something bad. Buckle that, making sure that your life jacket is buckled or that you're wearing your visibility vest or, that you put on your safety glasses. We have the same problems today in safety that we had previously. It's hands, it's eyes, it's access and egress, it's slips, trips, and falls. But I can speak for Manson, our level of severity has gone down exponentially, as well as our frequency has gone down dramatically. So, you're not supposed to focus on the numbers, but the numbers at least show a trend, and it is tough to drive that down. So really for us, that part of what it changed was with safety, we do more planning than we ever did. And when we first started implementing all this, we had people out on projects, superintendents that would say, you can't do that. You're gonna make this take so much longer. You can't do that. Well, guess what happened? Because we did more planning, we were actually more efficient. We contemplated issues that we could run into, and our production increased. And that was really a result of focusing on safety. So really that for us and for a lot of our industry compatriots who have also done a good job, that's a big deal.
You've talked about the new vessel. I know, and you've talked about a substantial investment that you've already made in vessels that are coming. But looking ahead, next 12 to 36 months, just to give it a bookend, but you can use whatever time frame you want. How do you intend to invest in vessels and people?
Absolutely. Well, first off, on the heavy civil side, if one looks at just all the work out in the Pacific, we are literally looking at billions of dollars of projects. they're $8 billion max, $4 billion max. Max are a multiple award construction contract. And so we're really focusing on that. I can tell you right now, we're looking at pricing some flat barges for construction, as well as we're 99.7% done with our design. We're working with C-Job on our new Cutter Suction Dredge, which will work mainly out of the Gulf. And so we are having to adjust to our markets. And the most important element of that is people. And so, in our industry, in my view, has a problem. We're able to get engineers out of college. That's great. We've done, our recruiting team has done an excellent job of getting people that want to be in the maritime industry. People out of college now, depending on where you're working, adjusted for geography, I guess you'd say, we're having people starting anywhere from mid 70s to mid 80s. That's an engineer out of college, right? So we're able to get those people, and they're very smart. We have our own in-house training that we do. And so they are a big part of our future and what we do. One issue we have is a lot of those people, they live the life, right? Our projects are all over the country, whether they're heavy civil marine construction or dredging, but they go and work where the projects are. Well, eventually, they're not 22, 23 years old anymore. They've been in the business for 5 years, 7 years, and they want to have a significant other, or they want to buy a condo, or they want to have a dog. And so they want a little bit more stability. So you run into that. And then the other thing we face is that people in crafts. So Manson, for our hopper dredges, for example, we're Inland Boatmen's Union. We have an all waters agreement with them. So we work all over with the hoppers. And then depending on where you are and what the jurisdictions are, we use operator engineers on our clamshell dredges and on our cutters, as well as pile drivermen or carpenters, depending on what type of work you're doing. And so it's getting people to stay or want to be in those industries and understanding what kind of money is being made out there is a big deal. So this is about 4 years old, but we had like 37% of the employees at Manson were making over $100,000. And I bet you that number now is probably more like 50%. I would have to see, but wages have been going up, that kind of thing. So what we've been trying to do is we've been ramping up with people. I can tell you for the new hopper dredge, we've been carrying extra people on all of our other hopper dredges so that we have a crew ready to rock and roll and go. We also, you have licensed mariners on these dredges, and you want people with experience. And so we don't purposely steal our competitors' people. We don't do that. But that said, in the industry, some of our competitors have decided to retire some dredges, and some people were out there and became available. So, we've been in the mode of adding quality people all over on all sides of our business. And that is really the key. If Jeff Bezos decided he wanted to own the US dredging industry, he could go out and decide to build 20 hopper dredges and 20 cutter suction dredges and 20 clamshell dredges. But guess what? It's the people pulling the levers. It's the people navigating the ships that get that work done. And so it's up to us to continue to take care of them the best we can and to focus on performing that work safely. No, by the way, I'll throw in this tidbit. Something that's different about the US market for dredging and heavy civil marine construction is almost all of the work that we perform, we have to put up 100% performance and payment bonds, which means we have to perform the work. A lot of the international work, they operate under something called demand bonds. You might do a demand bond for 5%. And what sometimes companies do is they're out there, and if their job's going poorly, they just pull off and they leave. And they're like, we'll just surrender our 5% bond. Well, guess what? We've been with our bonding company over 70 years. It's Liberty. Before they bought Safeco, we were with Safeco. That relationship is extremely important. And oh, by the way, if you end up defaulting on a project with the US government, you have evaluations that'll live with you forever. You aren't going to get other work. So we have to perform. We can't say that we're going to do a project, provide performance and payment bonds, and then not do the work. And that's something that's a little different than the international market. So anyhow, in terms of looping back to your question, the focus really is on all the projects that are out there. What is the best match for our equipment, for our people? Capital is a finite resource, and so we can only do so much. So we really have to focus on what we're doing. I like to say, we could get into the froyo biz, but the reality is we're going to stick to our unofficial motto, 1 foot in the water. We're going to stick to bridges, wharves, piers, dredging, demolition, offshore work in the Gulf.
When you look at the Jones Act, can you put in perspective its importance to your operation with insights on any threats that you see to the Jones Act currently today?
Well, as I previously said, all of our equipment is U.S. built, flagged, and crewed in U.S. shipyards. It costs more money to do it that way. If we could have built our new hopper dredge in South Korea, we probably could have built it in half the time and for 2/3 the cost. But that's not the law. The law is the Jones Act, and we abide by the law. So that's really paramount to what we do. There have been instances over the years where some competitors have tried to bring in some non-Jones Act compliant equipment, and they've asked for waivers. And so as best we could, we have tried to fight those waivers, and 99% of those have not got through. I can thank my Senator Maria Cantwell. She's helped out with stopping bogus waivers from being approved, and so that's a big deal. For us, it's about an even playing field. If it's going to cost me X dollars per day for a U.S. shipyard, then I want my competitor to have that same thing. I like to say, look, you can demand that I have a goat on the deck of a dredge as a requirement. So long as my competitor has to have a goat on the deck of their dredge, I'm okay. That's fine. Just be consistent with how you implement that. The challenges for the Jones Act, my concern is probably focused on, well, one avenue is a member of Congress, I could name some, but I won't give them any credit, could bring something up about how, the Jones Act, it's so bad. It costs extra money for grain to come down the Mississippi. And the issue there, of course, is, and I'm not in the grain shipping business, but the issue there is it's overlooking that Jones Act equipment, you have to comply with U.S. laws, you have to comply with U.S. Coast Guard. If it's an ocean-going vessel, you have to have it classed and so it costs money to do that. You have to take care of those people from obviously a U.S. security standpoint. As Trent Lott once said, I can sum up the Jones Act in one word: patriotism. So do you want to have foreign vessels possibly intentionally grounding themselves on the Mississippi River or near a submarine base in Kings Bay? No, you don't want to have that happen. Other countries have cabotage laws around the world. It just so happens that the U.S., and of course, we refer to the Jones Act, it's a collection of laws. You have the Dredge Act, which is part of the Jones Act. You have the Passenger Services Vessel Act. They all intertwine. And so, one avenue where there was trying to be movement by some of the Europeans on the Jones Act was through trade, and they wanted to try to do it via trade. The idea is things like, well, we're not going to touch the Jones Act, but we want to change the definition of dredging to be construction. And then therefore, it wouldn't count as the Jones Act. And then another one we're hearing is, well, we want to change the Jones Act. The Dredge Act. That was what, 1906, I think was the Dredge Act, if I'm not mistaken. And that is so antiquated. And why do we need that? And so obviously there are markets out there around the world that, due to various laws in various countries, you can't get into. Gee, do I want to go sell real estate in England? Sure, why not? Well, guess what? I can't just go sell real estate in England, right? It doesn't work that way. And the good news is, for Jones Act supporters, it is supported on both sides of the aisle in Congress. Who do we lobby? Both sides. You know why? Because dredging and infrastructure is agnostic to party. We need dredging so that our ships can come in fully loaded, lower those costs of goods. We need U.S. entities to do that work, to do that dredging, so that our harbors are safe.
Fred, you've been very generous with your time. I just had one more question. Jones Act aside, what do you count as the number one challenge to running an efficient, profitable marine construction and dredging business in the U.S. today?
Well, I'd say it's two things. One, which I already alluded to, was the people. It's really the people that makes it happen. It's our employees. They are the ones that bring it home. They are the ones that make the operations successful. Thankfully, Manson, and I'm sure our competitors too, have a lot of extremely smart people that do a fantastic job day to day. They come in and they bring it all the time. We're with where we are with the work that's coming out. The second part of that answer is, we don't want to get too big for our britches in terms of projects that we take on. Again, bonding is a very important part of being a U.S. dredger and contractor. And we happen to be in an excellent position with regard to what our bonding is. So we could bond, $1 billion of projects. $1 billion is a lot of work. Well, if you become part of an $8 billion MAC, you need to be able to do that. So we don't want to get overextended. One thing about being an English major and not an engineer is sometimes we fall in love with something because it's really cool and we figure out how to do it. But is it really something we should be doing commercially? Just because something's really cool and you have the capability to do it, is it something where you can earn $1? We are an employee-owned company. We are about wanting to be, Manson is 120 years old. We want to be around in another 120 years. And so, part of our culture is we want to be making decisions that are longer term decisions, which is why we're building a $200 million plus 15,000 cubic yard hopper dredge. It's that focus on that longer term. And so really that's where we have to be measured, calculated, is not to take on too much. And I would say that with my industry compatriots as well. Don't get too enamored with your own reflection in the mirror, and just, I like to say, stick to our knitting. We need to stick to our knitting and not worry about what other folks are doing. And it's not a race. It's not a competition. I don't care about revenue one iota. I want to be profitable and I want to be safe.
Thank you for listening to Maritime Matters. If you would like to be featured on a future Maritime Matters podcast, visit www.marinelink.com or email maritimematters@marinelink.com.